touching public has to be minimum. And the less you have to touch public to get something done, and the less people that are involved, typically the smoother it operates.
Welcome to Mastering Restaurant Revenue, turning restaurant dreams into significant profits. We're your hosts, Bruce Russo, 550-plus restaurant concepts designed and built, and a tower of national and regional awards. He is the GOAT of restaurant design and build for money-making operations. And I'm Diane Armitage, 30 years leading a global marketing agency. I help restaurants design not just a space, but a profit machine. Every episode of Mastering Restaurant Revenue delivers proven, no-fluff strategies to significantly increase profits and streamline operations, from restaurant builds and remodels to kitchen efficiencies and the hallowed guest experience, without burning you out. With decades of experience, our number one goal is simple: help restaurants make more money, because making more money shouldn't be this hard. How are you doing today, Bruce?
All is good. Happy days to everyone out there. Yep.
Happy days to everyone out there. And we're making their days happier because we're introducing a concept that you basically came up with yourself called revenue pods. Revenue pods in a restaurant, meaning that you're not just opening a restaurant operation. You are doing what with revenue pods?
Revenue pods come from designing a restaurant to make money. And they all function, every revenue pod functions a little bit different. Although everything is under one roof, they all operate a little different. And when you focus on the revenue pod scenario, you'd be amazed how polished things get and how much your revenue stream increases.
Exponential revenue stream.
Yes.
Not just geometric, exponential.
No, correct.
So we've been covering, over the many episodes that we've been doing, we've been covering different revenue pods. And if you have missed some of the revenue pods, they are in our earlier sessions. But we wanted to cover another revenue pod that's really important to restaurants, and most of them overlook this. Wouldn't you think, Bruce?
Yes, I do. At times I do.
Okay. So what we want to talk about today are your to-go program, your takeout program. Now, typically when I go into a restaurant and I'm working with them as a restaurant strategist, expansion growth strategist, typically if they are doing anywhere even around 10% in their takeout, then I am recommending that it become a larger department in the restaurant, because it can be significant.
Yes.
We were talking earlier, I've seen percentages grow. What percentage have you seen a decent takeout program actually bring to a restaurant?
20% is a good balance. Again, it really depends on the concept. I mean, if it's I think there's the percentage is bigger when it's a $20 check average than as if it's a $65 check average. But, I've interviewed Grubhub drivers, and, they say that they're all pretty much equal. Like they do just as many of upscale dining deliverers as they do the fast casual. So and
that kind of surprises me too.
Yeah. So it's the revenue pod that needs to be taken serious, because I think a lot of restaurateurs, that's a to-go order, or that's a to-go order. But, if it's organized and it's streamlined, it all comes off the same expo line. And really the only difference from going to the dining room is it's plated on a plate, or is it plated in a to-go container. But once it gets from the expo line, how does it manage itself through the kitchen? Because I can tell you in restaurant design, I designed a separate door for all deliveries, for all the Grubhub guys, anybody that's coming to pick up to-go orders. We don't want them to go through the restaurant. It's a complete distraction from your entire business. I don't care what your check average is. Having traffic walk in and out of the place and carrying bags like it's a grocery store in the back. So what typically, if it's ground up, I design 4 parking spaces with a separate door out of the kitchen, and all the orders are picked up there. It has its own POS, and when it prints on the cook line, it prints title as a to-go order. And it's very simple to set up it's very simple to set up in the POS. And once you got that kind of organization, it's all about speed. It's all about how quick, because if the drivers that are coming to pick it up got to wait 30 minutes, I can tell you they're going to do that once or twice, and then it doesn't matter what the customer called for. And then you're going to be blamed because the order was never picked up. That's a big problem. So, there's a lot of things that go.
In many cases, the customer will cancel the order because it's taking so long.
Correct.
And they don't care if the driver actually has the food or not. They've decided that they've waited too long and they cancel it, and now you've lost that revenue.
Well, there's as you know, I've had my own concepts, and one of the concept that we had during COVID, a lot of the drivers they were printing money. But a lot of the problem was how they are being tipped by whoever placed the order. Okay. And the concepts that I had, there was a lot of apartments surrounding our location, and they didn't tip very well. They'd place $100 order and give the driver a $1 tip. So, it got to the point whenever they placed the order, the driver knew if it was going there, they weren't going to get tipped. They would never come pick it up. So the client would end up coming into the restaurant, screaming, wanting to know what their order is. And look, it's sitting right here. But I would take it. I'm sorry. It has nothing to do with us, but I'll tell you what I'll do. We'll put that one in the trash and we'll make you a new one fresh right now. But it just got to the point
that
where,
is.
It was a problem.
Yeah, you're right. And, COVID was an interesting tester for to-go programs. I'll tell you that. How quickly they were able to ramp up, and if they even had the materials available to provide takeout, the containers. And it was really interesting because it hit us so fast that restaurants weren't prepared to go in that direction. And I remember talking with one of the highest end restaurants we have here in Laguna Beach. And he said, we sat down in the first week of COVID and we thought, we're done. We're over. This is it. And then they sat and they thought it through. They worked out the numbers and they said, okay, we're going to try this takeout. And the takeout ended up being a gigantic bang up business for their very careful plating, high end restaurant. And the great thing about what happened with COVID, if we have anything great about it, was that it got restaurants ramped up to the understanding that to-go orders can significantly add to your revenue, and they're branding for you as people order from you. And if they are liking the food that they're getting in the takeout or the to-go, they will begin to come into the restaurant when the restaurant is reopened, or they will become patrons within the restaurant.
Yes.
And that was significant. It was a great branding exercise for all of the restaurants out here. So it's something to consider, but I don't know if restaurants are able to put, a base tip or anything like that. I just don't think that they can when it comes to Grubhub or Uber Eats or any of that, because it's company operated deal.
Yeah. And that, when it's on Uber platform, when the order goes in, it's on Uber's platform. The Uber's the one that's placing the order. So, the restaurant, the only part of the restaurant involved in that whole transaction is making the food to fulfill the order for Uber, Grubhub, or whoever it is, and how they deliver it, because they're a delivery service. They make their money making deliveries. They don't make their money making food. Now, I can tell you during COVID, there was restaurants that, the owner jumped on board right away, and we took like half the dining room and put kitchen tables out there and made it part of a prep area, and they would just come in and out. There was no customers in the restaurant, but I can tell you for 12 months, through the whole thing of the COVID scenario, their sales were like 120% from the year prior.
Right. Right. Well, it was an interesting time frame because people were stuck and desperate to be eating out, and it just went through the roof. It was unbelievable what kind of revenue that they were generating, but they had to jump on it fast. Like, for instance, I was talking before we started recording this, we had a restaurant who began with sous vide immediately. Now, health departments have been a little iffy about sous vide because, because of the low cooking process and the bacteria and this and that. If you've got people who don't know how to do sous vide, you can't just throw anybody in there to put that process together.
Yes.
But these guys were turning out, beef Wellington, beef stroganoff. I mean, they were turning out impeccable dishes, all wrapped in sous vide, right? And they were on the market within days of the shutdown, and they took over so much of that market in that time frame. It was unbelievable. And so, I mean, at the time, they didn't have drivers, but you could just drive up to the back alley door, so to speak, and they would, hand you your food. And it was an interesting learning experience and learning curve for any restaurant operator. Now, when we were talking about setting up the expediting in the back, you've said that you don't just design a door, you design the expediting to handle that as well. So can you expand on that as well?
Yeah, so the expediter at the expo line, typically there's an expediter, and he's the king over everything. He's the one that touches the plate before it goes. He puts the garnish. The expediter calls the orders. He keeps track of, these plates go to table 22, these go to 26. He is the king of the kitchen. And when the chef and the expediter are together, it's a beautiful thing to watch. It's like a machine. So when it comes to go, you got the chef involved and you got the expediter involved. As I said earlier, the difference between the two, one goes in a box and the other one goes on a plate. So you just can't put it in a box and you're done, because that's what happens when you put it on a plate. You put it on a plate and it goes out to the dining room. When it gets put in a box, then it has to go somewhere. And you just can't leave it set on the counter. It has to be maintained as a valuable piece. And it has to go to an expediting terminal for it to go. That's the best way to do it.
Correct.
It's not a side business. It's a serious revenue pot. And when you treat it like it's a side business, that's when you get in trouble. Because if people eat at your restaurant and they get to go in your restaurant, they expect the same quality in that to-go box as you have at your restaurant. And
Agreed.
When that doesn't happen, it becomes a problem. Now they're second guessing, what's going on here.
Right. So when you talk about an expediting station, you're saying that the expediter is moving the primarily boxed or containered food and then moving it over to the expediting station where everything else is done, like the napkins and the forks and the bags and this and that.
So he's done his job as an expediter, getting the food where it belongs, in the box on the plate. Then there has to be another expediter, a to-go expediter, that takes that product and now delivers it in a different way that's being delivered in the other portion of the restaurant. You just can't grab a dishwasher and say, hey, I launched for the Joneses, pull up and give them run this out to the car. Doesn't work that way. The best way to do it is, that you just put a sign up, you put a phone number, and you text that phone number what station you're at. Like if it's parking space number 4, you just press number 4. And when they bring the product out to you, they know it's yours. Double check the receipt, and it's already paid for. You paid for it when you ordered it. That's a serious to-go business.
Absolutely.
But, it has the less, I don't want to say this, the touching public has to be minimum. And the less you have to touch public to get something done, and the less people that are involved, typically the smoother it operates. So the more that can happen communication-wise electronically, to where the only The only connection is when when the staff of the restaurant delivers that bag to the vehicle. That should be the only time you ever touch or see the customer.
And when you are setting up the 4 parking spaces for the to-go or the takeout, are you recommending that the restaurants also keep the drivers in their cars so that they're not coming into the restaurant or attempting to go through that particular door of the restaurant? I agree.
See, because there's times where you can have 5 or 6 Uber guys at the same restaurant.
And they're all standing around at the hostess stand or the bar waiting for their food to show up. And like you said, with a big refrigerator cooler bag that makes it look like a grocery store.
Right.
Yeah.
And
not the kind of picture that you want to have your patrons seeing.
Yeah, it's not like we have anything against whoever drives Uber or Grubhub. That's not the case. It's not about the person that's driving the car. It's the disruption process of the restaurant itself. There's no reason for that business to come in the front door because they're not coming to dine.
Correct. And there's no reason for them to be standing around waiting because there should be some kind of, like you said, a texting system that says, okay, now it's ready. Let us bring it to you. I mean, because it is that disruption when you see them walking in, hanging out, walking across the restaurant sometimes, and so it's so imperative that when you're really looking at building out that department, that it is actually its own department. And like you said, it has its own door. Yes. Now, you were working with a franchise, a chain. Was it franchise or a chain? But you were working with a large restaurant. They had concepts everywhere. Yeah. And they were well known for, what was it? You would call it a counter service. But they also had counter service where people would come in and sit down and eat. But they also you designed a separate entrance. And even if someone wanted to come to the place and order to go, they went to that separate entrance.
Correct.
And worked with the register there.
Entry A was for dining. Yeah, entry A was for dine-in. Entry B was for places to go or pick up a to-go order. It was nothing but to go. Separate POS. They had a separate expo. How the orders came up. And there's a burger concept that I think we've done 10 or 12 restaurants for them. Mom and pop operation that's grown. I think they got 12 or 14 stores, and a lot of their business is to go. And I think when we do the site plan with them, I think we put like 10 parking spaces for pickup orders. But here's the thing: when you have a to-go department, so to speak, those people that work in that department, they deliver bags of cars 50 times a day. So there's a process to that. Okay, somebody walking in and trying to do their job for 2 or 3 minutes, it doesn't work. Because
I agree.
They're a complete stranger to the process.
Correct. And at the same time, so many restaurants will assign their hostess, the hostess stand to take the to-go orders and then to finish boxing up and packaging that material. Big mistake.
Big mistake.
I mean, there's nothing worse than walking in and saying, hi, 2 for dinner, and the host is on the phone taking a takeout order, asking about ketchup. Do you need chopsticks? Do you need forks?
No,
all of that. And you're standing there waiting. Big mistake. It's a huge mistake. So the first and best thing to do, even if it's just you have your whole thing designed and you don't have an extra door, the best thing to do is to set up a phone line in the office, and that phone line is only for takeout. To go. Period. Yes. It has nothing to do with the front of house. Yeah.
True.
Okay. So when we're talking about to go and takeout here, we're talking about setting up separate entrances. We're talking about setting up even a separate register. Like, for instance, I was just telling Bruce before we got on here that there's a Laguna Beach restaurant that's rented a very small space right next to the restaurant, and they are making that their takeout department because it is a significant revenue maker for them. And when you have a person who is connected to the kitchen, so they have the expediting happen in the kitchen, and then they're moving that into that particular place, that person is taking the orders and greeting the drivers and greeting the people who are picking up, all that kind of thing. And it's just a beautiful service that's not interrupting the regular service on the inside of the dining room.
Yes. And I've seen some great operators to where a lot of their to-go orders don't start till like 3 o'clock in the afternoon. Mm-hmm. And I've seen them take their prep work is done in the morning. So they make the prep kitchen the to-go kitchen. So nothing, it doesn't even get involved with the main cook line and the chef and the expo window. It has its own L-shaped counter, and it comes down. So the prep kitchen becomes a service kitchen, and it's all for the to-go orders. And everything is there.
Yeah,
all
that's perfect.
The shelves are there. All to-go packaging is there. Everything is right there. And then they have metro shelving with the alphabet, A to D, and it's all, and the bags go there. And they actually do let the Uber drivers come in, but all they do is to look on the D shelf and look up for the Doral family, and they pick it up and they go because it's all done.
Right. It's a great idea. It's a great plan. It's a great way to work that efficiency, and when you really don't have anything going on in the prep kitchen from that point forward.
Correct.
For the evening. Yeah. Very well. Okay. Anything else that we want to add about the revenue pod of takeout? We've talked phone lines. We've talked freeing up your hostess stand. We've talked the expediting line. We've talked separate entrances, designating parking spaces that are numbered.
The do's and don'ts of to go.
Yeah, the do's and don'ts
of to go.
Yeah. Yeah, pretty significant. We were talking earlier too. It'll be interesting to find out from restaurants what they think about people who are trying to order to go, who are within a half mile of the place, because in some cases, when I'm within a half mile of the place, I'm told that I have to go pick up the food anyway. And I know that probably is happening through the third-party drivers, because they just don't want to be, it's almost like, when you land at LAX, no taxi or Uber wants to take you to an LAX airport because they're driving a quarter of a mile, and they don't want to have to deal with that kind of a short fare. Yeah. And it is interesting then, because I just won't order when that happens. And I don't know if the restaurants know that this is what's happening, or if there's a way that they can subvert that somehow, or change that in some way, shape, or form. But I find that that's the only issue that I've run into as far as the service and the experience goes with takeout or to go, when I simply am told, I'm sorry, you have to go pick up that stuff anyway. And I'm like, well.
And my answer to that is, you can go to New York and you can actually see how that's rectified. Every restaurant, there's delivery services that are a bicycle.
That's
with
true.
A box on the back that either keeps it cold or keeps it warm. And, if you're 3 blocks away, it's a whole lot quicker to use that bicycle service to get your food than it is waiting for Uber.
That's a great point. Yeah, that is a great point.
If you want to get serious about it to go, and maybe 40% of your business is less than a half a mile away, I think you need to go to the bike store and buy some bikes and buy the right box to carry it and deliver it.
I think that's a great idea. Well, and when you're talking about that, how you said that you were running concepts and then you had apartments all around it. Right. This is such a great, it's a great opportunity for you to establish your brand with these particular apartments and find a way to get the food to these apartments, and to ensure that, if the Uber drivers, the Grubhub people aren't involved, that you've set up a separate delivery system to these apartments right around you, so that you're not losing on the revenue and they're actually receiving their food. So it's something to look into when you. That's
what it came to. Da Vinci was the GM there that kind of ran the whole place. He would personally, if they were 2 blocks away, he would personally take their order and knock on their door and deliver their order.
Well, as long as he wasn't needed in the restaurant to run the operation at the time.
No. I mean,
as long as he wasn't needed in the
no, he had 7 or 8 people under him that, if he was gone for 15 minutes, it didn't hurt anything. But I mean, if he didn't do it, he would have somebody, if they were standing around, here, go deliver this order. Here's the address. And it helped tremendously.
Right. I mean, if you think about it, it's almost like having a valet. The valet parks off site. He's 2 or 3 blocks away, and you've got these valets who are running back and forth between the restaurant and the parking spaces. So why wouldn't you have them doing the same? Not the valet, but why wouldn't you have a team of 1 or 2 or 3 people on your particularly busy nights doing the same, just expediting and delivering? If you're in that kind of a situation, it makes perfect sense. Yeah. Okay. Well, that wraps up our revenue pod on to-go and takeout. Hope we gave you some great new ideas. And we will be back next week with more revenue operating ideas for everybody out there. Thank you for listening. I really look forward to having you come back and hear us and share our information. And please go to our YouTube's page, Mastering Restaurant Revenue, and subscribe. We really appreciate it. And we will see you in our next episode next week. Thank you very much.
Thank you for joining Bruce and Diane on this journey of mastering restaurant revenue. Please take a moment to like, subscribe, and share your thoughts in the comments below. Your feedback helps them deliver even more of what you want to hear. Until next time, keep refining your approach, stay passionate about your craft, and here's to your restaurant's continued success.